Hello ladies and gents, and welcome to the Fishbat Battle Report. Today I'm talking about Kings of War. Excellent game from Mantic to replace Warhammer Fantasy Battles. It's come out a few years ago actually, as an alternative, and as of August 22nd it will be in its second edition, which is stupendous timing since Age of Sigmar has killed Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Very good rule set. Only about 44 pages of rules, and right now the second edition rules are available free on the Mantic website. I'll put a link in the video description. But today we are playing with Undead versus Dwarves. I'm playing the Undead, my friend is playing the Dwarves. 1,400 points, and it's a kill scenario. You know, just very basic, line up across the table, run towards each other, and see who can get the highest percentage of kills of the enemy team. So here's the deployment. I'm going to go through a little bit to explain the gist of what each of these units do. So if you're unfamiliar with Kings of War, this won't be all baffling. So, along the left we have the Dwarves, being played by my friend. You'll notice that half the things there have iron at the beginning of their name. Quite dwarven trait. I'll just explain what some of them are. Iron Watch are riflemen. They shoot. Iron Clad, the regular dwarf warriors. Iron Guard are the elite dwarf warriors. They're quite a lot tougher, and they also get something called crushing strength, which lowers the defense of whatever they're hitting. And then there's the Iron Belcher, which is a cannon. So, Iron Troop, Iron Clad, Iron Guard, and Iron Belcher. In addition to that, let's go from top to bottom on the left. So there's an Iron Watch troop just on the other side of the river, guarding it against those fast undead things on the other side. Behind them are Bulwarkers. In theory those are dwarves with spears, but since these are old models we're using miners as a substitute. Then we have some Iron Guard next to them. So tough guys to hold the flank against these crushing strength and thunderous charge types coming at them. The Ironclad Regiment just near that on the other side of the house. And those are, you know, your bog standard dwarf regiment. They're tough, they're slow, they hold the line. So two of those together with an organ gun between them and a standard bearer to give them inspiring. Inspiring lets you reroll your morale tests, which is very important in this game. Without him, one bad roll and the unit could die from taking a little bit of damage, so a standard bearer is magnificent insurance against that happening. We also have a Jaren Bombard. It's got a catapult model there, but it's being used as a bombard. Another Iron Watch troop just in front of the forest to fire on those incoming zombies. An Iron Belcher cannon, and then the Berserkers. The Berserkers have a lower defense than most of the other dwarves, but they also have far more attacks. They have a lot of attacks, and quite a high nerve as well. They're a pretty scary blender of a unit. Now, in regards to all these war machines the dwarves are running, the organ gun is a little bit different to the other two. The Jaren Bombard and the Iron Belcher work like most war machines. They get a single shot, it hits on a 5+, and if it hits, it does a whole pair of damage. If it hits. Hitting on a 5+ means that on a 6-turn game, it'll usually only hit twice. Whereas that organ gun, every single time it shoots, that is 15 shots. Hitting on a 5+, you know, that's about 5 shots of hitting a game. And so it's a lot less damage, but it's far more consistent. And we'll see how that turns out this game. Turning towards the Undead, on the right side, right at the top we have Soul Reaver Cavalry. Those are vampires on horses with lances. They mean business. They have what all cavalry have, a rule called Thunderous Charge, and that means the initial turn they charge in, they get a 2-point bonus in reducing the enemy's defense, which does a pretty good job of making mincemeat of anything it charges. However, they lose that if, first of all, they charge something with pikes, or if they charge across rough terrain, like that river. Below them we have Wraiths. These are rather tough to kill ghost dudes. They can fly around and move over obstacles, get into rather tricky positions. Fairly useful sort of guys. Now, although they have a high defense, a defense of 6, so whenever you hit them you need to roll a 6 to damage them, They do have a rather low nerve, so you need to be careful not to get them into a silly spot. Beneath that is Necromancer. The Undead really relies upon its Necromancers. They are terrible fighters. Rubbish. A single attack that hits on a 5. Useless. However, Necromancers use various kinds of magic that really helps to support the army. You see, most Undead have a rule called Shambling. That means they can't move at the double, which they really need to get across the table and get into combat. But Necromancers have a rule called Surge, which is a spell they cast to boost the movement of whatever they're firing it at. So they might pick a unit near them, roll 8 dice, and every roll of a 4+ is an extra inch that unit moves in that phase. This is a critical part of the Undead strategy. Necromancers can also be given other spells, but they become more expensive as we do that. For that Necromancer we're looking at now, just next to the Wraiths, that also has a heal spell that can be used to strip damage off a damaged unit. Beside that Necromancer we have a Revenant Regiment and a Skeleton Warrior Regiment. Skeleton Warriors are your basic fighters. They're not very good. I think they've got a melee skill of 5+. That is, that for all of their attacks, they're only hitting on 5+. A defense of 4+. And not many attacks, 12 I think. And I think their nerve is dash/16. What's that mean? Well, when you're seeing if a unit dies, after they've taken damage you roll 2d6 and add the damage they've taken. If it is greater than the first value of their nerve, they waver. If it's greater than the second value, they rout, they're dead. So when I say dash/16, dash is they've got no wavering value. They're undead, they don't waver. They're not going to be scared of anything. But the second value, 16, if you roll over that, 2d6 plus their damage, over 16, it means that they've been destroyed, they've been routed. The Revenants are like the Skeleton Warriors, except they're a bit tougher. They've got a defense of 5, they're going to stick around for longer. They've also got a higher nerve of 17. And there's another Necromancer behind them. I beg your pardon, the Necromancer near the Wraiths doesn't have the healing spell, the one behind the Skeleton Warriors does. Beneath them is the White Regiment. These are big guys, and they are very useful. They have Crushing Strength 3. They lower the defense of enemy units they hit by 3. That is really good. They find something tough and they smash it. However, they're somewhat tough themselves, but their nerve is not amazing. So, although they can dish out the pain, they can't necessarily take much pain themselves. And I'm probably over-conservative with them in this game, as you'll see later. Balefire Catapult, the only ranged capabilities that the Undead have in this entire game. Well, there are Skeleton Archers, but I haven't got those. The Catapult, single shot, hits on a 5+ and does lots of damage, like most war machines. Beneath that, the Zombie Horde. Big block of zombies. It's slow, it shambles. It has a whole bunch of attacks and not many of them hit. And it also stays around for a long time. And below that, there's the Revenant King, the only inspiring I've brought along today. I don't know if that was a good decision. Perhaps I should have brought 1 or 2 more. Because you need to be within 6 inches of him to get that inspiring reroll to your nerve. And then at the bottom, Revenant Cavalry. They again have that thunderous charge to lower the enemy defense. But they shamble, so they can move quick because they're on horses, but they can't move at the double. The Revenant King can surge them, and that's the strategy I've got here. I want to plow ahead and smash those berserkers before they get any ideas. So, let's have some look at the deployment. Very fuzzy photos of the Dwarves there. So going left to right we have the berserkers, the cannon, Iron Watch, the bombard, some ironclad, looking at the center, the organ gun, more ironclad, the iron guard, then the Dwarven King is there. He's another inspiring unit, and not a bad combat force either. Then next to the King you have the Bulwarkers, and finally the Iron Watch troop. For the Undead we have The Soul Reaver Cavalry, which are converted from High Elf Dragon Princes, actually. I think they look quite nice. The Wraith, the Necromancer, the Revenants. There we go, the Necromancer, the Revenants, the Skeleton Warriors, the Wights, the Catapult, the Zombies, the Revenant King, and the Horses, standing in front of a nice bit of terrain there, like an entrance to a Dwarven hold. So, on the first turn, on the right flank, the Vampire Cavalry move at the double. They go straight forwards towards those Iron Watch. And the Wraiths move up as well to support them. They will have a penalty for going over that river when they charge, but hopefully it's worth it. Over in the centre, the Skeletons move forward, all the way up. However, I'm looking at those war machines, and I'm getting a little bit afraid of them. So the Revenants don't move up as far as they could have gone. I hesitate a bit. They go over the river, but not much further. The Wights, especially, I get very nervous with. And I don't really send them forwards, because I'm scared they're going to take every war machine in the face and die before I use them. This was a mistake. First of all, because I really want to get to punching dwarves as fast as possible. And second of all, because I've left them in the open anyway, where they can get shot at. Thankfully, they don't really get shot at in this game, but it was a poor move nonetheless. Then on the left flank, we've got the Zombies and the Revenant Cavalry moving up as fast as they can. It's not that fast because they're shambling and they can't move at the double, but the Undead Cavalry are at least on horses, so they move at a decent speed, 8 inches. And the Revenant King is up there to support them as well. For the Dwarven first turn, the Iron Watch shoot at my Revenant Cavalry and do 2 damage to them. And the Organ Gun, the best war machine in this game, well, this particular match, manages to do 3 damage to the Revenants. So, Undead second turn. I'm very happy I've gotten this far up the board and not taken much damage. I'm pretty confident. So, the Soul Reavers, they charge into the Iron Watch, do 5 damage to them, and even with the disruption from the river, which means they're not getting the Thunderous Charge, and they're at -1 to hit because they've had to cross the river to get into combat, they still did 5 damage. And they made the Iron Watch waver, which means they can't counter-charge next turn. And the Wights, they move up to protect the flank and the rear of the cavalry, so they don't get minced by those Iron Guard. Meanwhile, in the centre, everything advances, and 2 damage is healed off of the Revenants. My Catapult, out of the photo here, fires and manages to inflict a healthy 4 damage onto those Ironclad. Makes me happy. On the left flank, the Revenant Cavalry smash into those Berserkers and do 5 damage to them. Good amount of damage. Now you can see I've put a blue 1 there. Blue represents healing that is done to a unit. Undead have a rule called Life Leech. Whenever they do damage to a unit in melee, they remove 1 damage off of themselves. 2 if they're a vampire. So this Revenant Cavalry has healed off half the damage they've taken from that shooting before. Rather nice. The Zombies have moved up as well, and they've got a little boost. The Revenant King surged them 3 inches. I said over here that I forgot to mention it. Anyway. So over here, yes, the Soul Reaver Cavalry did indeed take 5 damage. There we go. And that's kind of what the table looks like after that. You can see that things are starting to get nice and close to the Dwarven lines. Undead turn 3. Everything moves up even further. Lots of action here, like all across the table, things are moving up. We have those Wraiths that have moved up. The Skeletons have gotten into combat with the Ironclads. The Zombies have gotten into combat with the Iron Watch. And the Revenant Cavalry right at the top are continued to fight those Berserkers. So lots of things happen here. 5 more damage to the Berserkers over on the right there from the Cavalry, and they heal another damage off themselves. The Zombies do 4 damage to the Iron Watch in the centre there, and they actually rout them. Those Iron Watch should go off the table. The Necromancer heals 3 damage off of the Revenants, and the other necromancer surges them 5 inches, trying to get towards those ironclads. However, it fell an inch short. If he managed 6 inches, it would have been close enough to get into combat. As it was, he was just an inch away, that unit. The skeleton warriors, however, were able to get where they needed to be. They charged into combat, did a single point of damage to those ironclads. They were up to 5 by this point, and they wavered, which means they can't charge next turn. On the other side of the table, the Wraiths did 2 damage to that Iron Guard unit. The Vampire Cavalry did 3 damage to the Iron Watch unit, and managed to rout it when healing a point off themselves. Now the Dwarves turn 3. Right up the top, the Berserkers charge the Cavalry, deal 4 damage, roll, nerve, and rout them. Very bad result, but because I have Inspiring nearby, I get a reroll, and they hold onto the table, which is a pretty big deal. Moving on, I haven't got anything written for the cannon there, but I'm pretty sure it fired at something and it missed as well. It was useless. Then the Jaren Bombard fires at my whites, misses, so that's 3 turns in a row, both of those have missed. The Ironclads there, just opposite the Skeletons, because they've wavered, they can't charge back. So my Skeletons are standing in the open, and the Organ Gun thinks, ooh, yummy, and puts 4 damage right into them. Meanwhile, the Ironclads decide they're going to punch those Revenants, and they do 2 damage. The Iron Guard retaliate on the Wraiths. I keep trying to call them the Whites. The Whites and the Wraiths, they seem very similar. But they do punch the Wraiths and do 1 damage, and the Dwarven King and the Bullwalkers charge into the Vampire Cavalry and do a damage each. Undead 4th turn. At this point, I'm pretty happy with how the game is going. Everything that I need to get stuck in is getting stuck in, except for the Whites. And I'm within a turn or 2 of being able to break his stuff and take his war machines and do all of that good stuff. So what's going on? Right down the bottom here, the Revenant Cavalry are into his Berserkers, do another 5 damage for a total of 15. I roll Nerve, and I rout him. He is off the table. Also gets a damage back because of Life Leech. Over in the centre in that big combat, the zombies actually managed to get a flank charge onto the Ironclads. Now in Kings of War, when you get a flank charge, you double the number of attacks the unit rolls. So zombies have 30 attacks, they were up to 60. They only hit on a 5+, but still, that's a lot of attacks. And they managed 4 damage. The Skeletons, meanwhile, inflicted another 2. Now between all of this damage that unit had taken, keeping in mind that it had already been hit by the Skeletons the turn before, and the Catapult on turn 1, they routed off the table. Meanwhile, the Revenants charging the other Ironclad unit did 3 damage. And as you can see from all those blue numbers, I healed a bunch of damage off myself as well from combat. Isn't Life Leech nice? And here's an after combat shot. When you finish a combat in Kings of War, and you are victorious, you can pivot a unit 360 degrees, change the facing any way you like. You can move D3 inches backwards, or you can move D6 inches forwards. Any one of those 3 options. So after finishing combats, all those things pivoted. The zombies want to go for the War Machine, the Rev Cav want to go for the War Machine, and the Skeletons want to go for the other Ironclads. So pretty successful turn there. You can see they've really swept up all of that left flank. On the other side of the table, things are a lot more bogged down. Not a lot's happening. Everything on this side of the table is really tough and sticky, and none of it's going to move in a hurry. The Wraiths do 1 damage to the Iron Guard, heal 1 off themselves. The Vampire Knights do 3 damage to the Bullwalkers and heal 2 off themselves. Dwarves turn 4. The cannon fires at the Revenant Knights to try and protect itself, and, would you believe it, it misses again! Yeah, at this point you sort of have to feel sorry for a poor old buddy here. Like, These war machines have tried their best, but nothing. The bombard this turn doesn't even try to shoot. It's going into the forest to try to protect itself, because whatever goes in there will get a disrupted charge. The organ gun continues to be useful, however, and pumps another 4 shots into my skeleton warriors. His standard bearer, which has a single attack, charged into my skeleton warriors from the flank. Noting at this point that individual units like heroes usually don't get bonuses for flank or rear charging units because they're only a single guy. But he has a single attack, charges the... I beg your pardon, not the skeletons, he charges the revenants. And he does a point of damage, and the ironclad charge them and do a point of damage as well. The Iron Guard fail to do anything to the race, and between the king and the ball walkers they do 2 damage each to the vampire knights. The game is moving along quite quickly at this point because lots of things are dead. On the Undead turn 5. The Revenant King charges into the bombard in the forest, does 5 damage and routs it. The Skeletons charge into the Standard Bearer, does 1 damage and heals the damage off himself. The Revenants charge into the Ironclad again, do 3 more damage. They also would have healed the damage off themselves, but I must have forgotten to put that on the slide there. The Raids again charge the Iron Guard, do 0 damage. That unit is going to be stuck there for a long time. Or so you would think. The Revenant Cavalry, they charge into the Bulwarkers, 4 more damage. The damage is beginning to stack up on them. And right at the other end of the table, same turn, the Revenant Cavalry charge into the cannon. Now, when you charge a war machine, no matter what you are, even a hero, you triple your attacks. So if you're a cavalry regiment with 16 attacks and thunderous charge, you triple that. So yeah, 21 damage, routed. That was a good feeling. It feels so nice when you break a dwarven line and get at those sweet, juicy, defenseless war machines. So, Dwarven turn 5. What we can see in the photo is that the Wraiths get punched by the Iron Guard and take 3 damage. Something actually decisive in that combat. Hurrah! And then something I really didn't expect. The Dwarven King punched the Vampire Knights for 1 damage and the Bulwarkers for 3. So they've taken a bit of damage at this point. And they roll nerve, and they routed them on a good roll. Yeah, really could have used some inspiring there. A reroll probably would have saved them. But yeah, they were off the table. And at this point, my whites are in a lot of trouble. Out of the camera shot you can see here, some things not pictured. The organ gun shoots the skeleton warriors, does 5 damage to them, and they rout off the table. The standard bearer does another damage off the revenants, and the ironclad regiment does another damage to the revenants. I'll point out at this point, the standard bearer has done 2 damage this game. It has been worth far more than 2 of my buddy's war machines that have done nothing. Undead turn 6. My catapult fires at the standard bearer near the centre of the picture there, and it misses. My zombies charge the organ gun, do 11 damage to it, tripling its attacks. That's 90 dice. Does 11 damage, routs it off the table. Revenants charge into the ironclads again, do a single damage, and they've accumulated enough by this point that they rout. I think they'd gotten close to 10 damage at this point. Now you can see here my wraiths are now behind the Iron Guard. What's happened? Well, they fly, remember? So instead of standing there waiting to be flank charged and rear charged, they simply flew over their enemies. It means they're not going to do anything for a turn, but they're not going to die either, and they can do something next turn if it goes to turn 7. Those whites there near the house is not shown in this photo, but they both get surged, and between the 2 spells they go forwards 9 inches. It's a pretty good roll. They do come an inch short of managing to charge those Iron Guard from the flank. That would have been magnificent, but again, the surge goes an inch short. And that's just a photo of the mop up afterwards. Those ironclad have been disappeared off the table. Dwarven turn 6. Well, he turns to face the new threat. The king and the Iron Guard charge into those... They're not wraiths, they're wights. Charges into the wights, and they each do 2 damage. The Standard Bearer also charges into the Revenants, but it fails to do anything. We roll for turn 7, and we do get it. So, Undead turn 7. The wights pile into the Bulwarkers there. No, sorry, not the Bulwarkers. They pile into the Iron Guard, and they do 4 damage. Now, the ghosts are there. They're facing the wrong direction. And for their movement, I pivot them. But you can't pivot them and move them, at least not if you pivot more than 90 degrees. And you certainly can't charge anything that's outside of your front arc of sight at the beginning of your turn. However, I pivot them and then I surge them with my necromancers. Because surge, you go directly ahead, and if you touch an enemy, you've just charged it. So you can pull a lot of tricky things with surge, which I did in this case. I pulled what would have otherwise been a completely impossible charge off, allowing me to get a flank hit, which is double the attacks against those Iron Guard, which was another 4 damage, allowing me to rout them. And of course, both of those units heal themselves. Now, what you can't see is the zombies charged the Standard Bearer, did 2 damage, but the Standard Bearer was okay. So the final turn, and this was the end of what the Dwarves were doing. The wights are punched by the Dwarven King for 1 damage, but they hold. The Bulwarkers hit the Revenants for 2 damage, and the Standard Bearer tries to get into the action as well, but he really doesn't do anything. And that's the end of the game. So it was a pretty crushing victory for the Undead. 77% of the Dwarves were destroyed, while only 20% of the Undead were. So it was a pretty solid Undead. A big thanks to my buddy for giving me the game. I hope you had a good time. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please leave some comments to give advice. This is my first time making a video battle report. And have a nice day.